2020 are called to order concurrently at 6:12 p.m. Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Commissioner Caravello.
Please stand. Right hand over your heart. Please begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
I'm going to be acting as your secretary today.
Okay. Madam
Chair-
Secretary, you please call the roll.
Thank you. Chairperson Smith,
Present.
Vice Chairperson Alshanable,
Present.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Present.
Commissioner Caravello,
Present.
and Commissioner Richard. Thank you. He's appearing by teleconference, just for the record. Thank you.
Oral communications. Please note the rules for meeting decorum on the screen, except it's not on there tonight. In the interest of time, these will not be read, but be advised that the Planning Commission will adhere to these standards. This is the time for the public to address the Planning Commission and the Airport Zoning Commission for items not on the agenda. Please note that if an item is scheduled as a public hearing, you will have an additional opportunity to speak when the public hearing is opened or continued. Comments made now regarding items scheduled for a public hearing will not be included in the official record of public testimony for that item. If anyone would like to address the commission on items that are not on the agenda, please come up to the podium. Please address your comments to the commission as a body and not to individual commissioners directly. Only very brief responses may be given to questions asked on topics not on the agenda. Please keep remarks to 3 minutes. Would anyone like to come up? No one? Okay. Seeing no one, I will close oral communications. Planning Commission and Airport Zoning Commission consent calendar. Consideration of Planning Commission and Airport Zoning Commission minutes for the regular meeting of December the 18th.
Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion made and seconded. Call the vote.
Chairperson Smith,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Alshanable,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Caravello,
Yes.
and Commissioner Richard.
Yes.
Thank you. There were no abstentions then. Everyone was present at this meeting.
Okay. Consideration of Planning Commission and Airport Zoning Commission minutes for the regular meeting of January 15th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Call for the vote, please.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Alshanable,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Caravello,
Yes.
and Commissioner Richard.
Yes.
Thank you. So again, no abstentions. Everyone was present. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now recess the Airport Zoning Commission. Planning Commission consent calendar. There are no items. Continued public hearings, no items. New public hearings. Zone Text Amendment 2020 ZA01. Now is the time and place to open the public hearing to consider Zone Text Amendment number 2020 ZA01.
Thank you, Chair. I will be presenting the staff report on behalf of our planning director. So it's my pleasure to present this. We have a Zone Text Amendment 2020 ZA01. This is an amendment to Chapter 17.99 regarding design review. As you may recall, by Ordinance 2119 that was adopted July 12, 2016, the City of Hawthorne created the Design Review Board. The intention of the Design Review Board was to compose a body that would conduct the architectural and design review of certain projects. It was created in 2016, and since that time, the City of Hawthorne has made many attempts to find volunteers for the commission. We've posted on cable. We also posted on our website. Unfortunately, we're not able to get sufficient members to actually compose the body. So what the staff has determined is that the best course of action to make sure that projects do get the appropriate design review and architectural review is to have the design review function and the authority placed in the hands of the planning commissioners, yourselves. And we think that's the best course of action. It's very common to have a planning commission serve as also design review body. And you are all familiar with reviewing these plans, so we think it can be very appropriate for us to do this. We are asking that you approve Resolution 2020-05, which contains a copy of a proposed ordinance for the City Council. The ordinance will repeal the Design Review Board section in Chapter 2.27, and then it will make corresponding changes to Chapter 17.99, reflecting the change from authority in a Design Review Board to authority in the Planning Commission. We provided notice as required by law and determined with CEQA, this is an exempt, it's exempt because it's not a project under guideline section 15378, as there's no potential to result in either a direct or indirect foreseeable physical change in the environment. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. Does the planning commission have any questions for staff?
I don't know if she did.
Questions of staff only.
Quick question, yes. The ordinance wasn't part of the, any of the links, correct? The ordinance that is being deleted,
The
language.
the language, that's correct. In the ordinance, we just, one of the sections just said that it's repealed.
Okay.
Right.
Now, does that ordinance identify the criteria or for design review?
Not chapter 2.27.
Okay.
Chapter 2.27 only had the constitution of the body, the composition of the body, more of the technical aspects of design review board. It's chapter 17.99 that had more of the actual guidelines, and that did not change. All that changed were references where it said design review board, it would now say planning commission.
Okay. Can I request that a copy of that be given to at least myself? I don't know if the other commissioners would like that, so that we can study on it a little bit, and next
course.
time something comes before us, we
Yes,
can
Yeah.
base it on that.
absolutely.
Okay.
We can get you a copy of chapter 17.99. No
Thank
problem.
you. No more questions for me.
Okay.
And then, what projects require design review?
I'm sorry?
What projects require design review?
That's a very good question, and it's actually contained in the ordinance. If somebody has a copy of it, I can go through that. I know residential projects are not part of design review. I think mixed-use projects, commercial projects, and I can't remember off the top of my head all of the things that are included, but if you look at the ordinance, there's one of the sections that does get revised, and it lists, it at least lists what is exempt, but if you go to the section right before that, it will tell you what projects are, would come within the review.
Okay.
I
Do you
think
have a
I've brought
copy
it.
of the ordinance?
Well, of the code itself.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
So let me see. Let me go through it really quick. Applicability shall be required for, I will read what it says. The exterior structural or architectural features, including color, material, site design, placement of structures, vehicles. So you want to know what types of projects though, right? Okay, here we go. The following are not subject to design review. All painting, siding, roofing, and other maintenance, decks of no higher than 4 feet from grade at any point, replacement of existing decks, single-family residences and residential additions, accessory structures less than 250 square feet, total floor area and less than 9 feet in height, commercial additions or improvements of less than 1,000 square feet to building or site surfaces that are not abutting residentially zoned property. Replacement or reconstruction of existing equipment or other facilities where the new equipment and facilities are similar in size. Temporary structures are not subject to this. The interior designs or layouts of buildings. The temporary uses and construction related to emergency or determined by the Director of Building and Safety to be necessary for the preservation of public safety. Also approved outdoor commercial activity such as outdoor dining areas. And the last exception is any project for which all zoning entitlements were obtained prior to adoption of the ordinance codified in this chapter. So anything that was not mentioned here is subject to design review.
Were you reading section 17.99.030?
Correct.
Okay, perfect, yeah. So we'll provide a copy of this to you as well.
Yes.
And then if you look at 17.99.020, part B has applicability. It's a little bit shorter, but design review shall be required for, did you read this part?
No, I started
Okay.
and then I went on to the next.
The exterior structural or architectural features, including color, materials, site design, placement of structures, and internal pedestrian and vehicular circulation of all projects involving new construction of buildings or other structures for which a building permit, zoning permit, or discretionary planning approval is required in all commercial and industrial zones and for all multifamily, residential, and mixed-use developments in any zone. Also, fences, walls, or landscaping related to a use type that requires design review, and all signs that are subject to Chapter 17.35. So you actually do get a lot more information by looking at what's exempt than what's,
Yes.
than what it applies to. But those are the two sections together. Thank you, Senior Planner Merrick.
Thank you. You're welcome.
But we'll provide a copy of the entire guidelines for you so that you have that and you can peruse it at your leisure.
Thank you.
Okay.
If I would just add, I remember when this came to the Planning Commission, I did request that at least can we see the plans, even if we weren't part of the
Yes.
review committee.
Yes.
And they said that yes, as a courtesy, we can just show them to you, but you wouldn't have any say.
Yes.
So I'm glad that this is back in our hands because, sometimes it's surprising when you see something that's big and huge and, it never came to the Planning Commission. I didn't know anything about it. So I'm glad that you're actually putting this back in.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So is there anyone who wishes to address the commission on this issue? Okay. Madam Secretary, are there any documents to place into the administrative record, such as late communications?
I'm not aware of any communications to place in the record. No.
Do any of my fellow commissioners have any final comments on the item or questions from staff? Okay. I now formally close the public hearing on this item. Call on my fellow commissioners for a vote on the item. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a
Second
second?
that motion?
Okay. So motion by Rula and Juan. Okay.
Got it.
Secretary, please call for the vote.
Okay. Chairperson Smith,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Ashanable,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Caraveo,
Yes.
Commissioner Richard.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'll recess the Planning Commission, call back to order the Airport Zoning Commission. Airport Zoning Commission consent calendar. There are no items. Airport Zoning Commission new or continued public hearings. There are no items. Call back to order the Planning Commission concurrently with the Airport Zoning Commission. Administrative items. Workshop, 2020 state regulations regarding accessory dwelling units, ADU, and junior accessory dwelling units, JADU, and input regarding potential city ordinance to comply with the new ADU/JADU laws.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Do you want me to start off or do you?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you so much for for that. We are going, this is based on your request as well. We wanted to make sure that you were aware of ADU laws. It's gotten a lot of attention recently. So what we did is we prepared a very short presentation on some of more the general aspects of ADU law to kind of get you familiar, because at some point we're going to bring something back to you that will be in compliance with state law. So we thought you should know what state law is. If you could just hold your questions to the end, and kind of given some of the circumstances of our meeting today, and there's just a lot of news going on, we probably want to get home early. If you have anything really specific that you want to ask us, go ahead and email me. We're going to do this again anyhow, so we'd like to be very conscious of time for everyone. So if it's something that you think is real specific or like a specific input, just send it to Senior Planner Maharic, and we'll start to look at that. But any other general questions you might have, just wait till the end, and we will try to answer them as best we can.
Okay, because I was going to suggest we didn't have all of the planning commission here tonight, that we maybe hold off on it, but if it's a short
It's
presentation.
very short, yeah.
Okay.
It's really general, just
And
to
then
kind
you're
of give
going
you
to
an idea.
bring it back to us later
Oh, yes.
also? Okay,
Yes, we are.
good.
Yes, we are. So with that, I'll go ahead and start. We're doing this old school because we don't have anything up to show you. So you all have a copy of the presentation.
Yes.
Okay, great. So ADUs, what are we actually talking about? We should start at the beginning. ADUs haven't always been called ADUs. They used to be called granny flats, second units, in-law units, secondary units. They are attached or detached residential dwelling units that are subordinate to a principal residence, but they weren't always known as ADUs. I would be clicking something right now to go to the next slide. I felt myself wanting to do that.
I did number the slides, Commissioner,
Yeah,
so you can
that's-
follow through.
Yeah. We get so used to technology and certain things. A little bit of background about ADU law. So obviously we all know that we're having a housing crisis in the state of California, and this is one of the things that the governor has been trying to do for several years now, making amendments to ADU law to try to encourage the creation of these second units to provide affordable housing to people. So in 2017, a couple years ago, they started to make some of these changes, and it was 3 sets of laws, and they kind of set it up for what happened in 2020. So SB 1069, it reduced parking requirements to 1 space per bedroom or unit. So obviously, if you have too many parking requirements, that's going to constrain development. They limited what we could require in terms of parking. They prohibited the local agency from requiring new or separate utility connections. That could have been an issue. Fire sprinklers were not required unless they were required for the primary residence. These are small steps, right, to try to make it a little bit easier for people to build these units. AB 2299 required ministerial approval of attached ADUs that met certain criteria. As we know, ministerial basically means that it's an objective standard. If you meet all the criteria, you get your permit. There's no discretion involved. It's quicker and it's easier. SB 2406 authorized local governments to permit junior ADUs, which were optional, with limitations with regard to owner occupancy, deed restrictions, separate entrances. They did provide some framework for it, but they did have this other option of JADU. So I would be clicking now to the next slide. So effective January 2020, we had a whole other set of laws that came into effect. These were AB 68, Senate Bill 13, and AB 881, which provided some additional restrictions, bigger restrictions, with, again, the idea of streamlining the process, making it easier, encouraging people to create these units so that there's more affordable housing options for people in California. So they reduced the timeline for permit review. It went from 120 days, now it has to be done within 60 days. It allows ADUs in multifamily buildings, not just single-family residences. It increased the allowable ADU square footage to 800 square feet. Explicitly prohibited restrictions based on lot size, lot coverage, floor area, and open space. This is a very big deal, because what a lot of cities were still doing is they were putting in parameters that were basically did not say that the unit wasn't allowed, but in effect made it so that the unit wouldn't be permitted. So now the law 2020 explicitly said you can't have these requirements that would have the effect of prohibiting an ADU. Nothing on lot size, lot coverage, floor area, and open space, unless it fits within what the law said. No owner occupancy covenants through January 1st, 2025. So now we previously, and we did require covenants to require that the owner either live in the ADU or live in the primary residence. They had to do one or the other. Now it's no longer a restriction. They could both be potentially rented out. They don't have to live in either one. And requires JADUs to be permitted. So there's certain types of ADUs and JADUs that have to be permitted. So anything that is contrary to state law is automatically void as of January 1st, 2020, and you would have to revert to the state standards. So next slide. What is the actual definition of ADU according to state law? An ADU means attached or detached, you can have either one, that provides complete independent living facilities for one or more persons on the same lot as a proposed or existing residence. It can be proposed. You can start from scratch and create the primary residence and the ADU, which may be single or multi-family dwelling and has a separate entrance than that of the primary residence and has provisions for living, cooking, sleeping, and all that. So the important aspects obviously is that we're gonna have two types, attached or detached. It can be single family or multifamily, and it has to have a separate exterior entrance. Next slide. By the way, I wanted to compliment I didn't get a chance to compliment you on the graphics. They were really good. They were really good.
Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing.
Aesthetics matters too, right?
Right?
You guys are going to be the design review body at some point, possibly. So you guys got to care about aesthetics. So what is a JADU? A JADU means a unit that is no more than 500 square feet. It's contained within the single-family residence with a separate entrance. It may include separate sanitation facilities, or it can share sanitation facilities with the existing structure, but it has to have at least an efficiency kitchen. That is an ADU.
Shall I?
Go ahead.
Let
Yes,
me-
please.
For the next slide.
Yes, go ahead.
So in terms of how many ADUs or JADUs are currently in the city, we did begin tracking those in 2018 or so. And so far, as of February, we have 68. And this encompasses different things. It's the conversion of garages or additions to the house that have been converted into ADUs. So far, we've tracked about 68, but we have received many inquiries, and now including JADUs, which we do not have any so far. But I know that there are some in the pipeline as of February, or March, I should say. Okay. So in terms of the permit process, as Melissa mentioned, the time frame, cities, we must act within 60 days. And we must review these ministerially. So these will not be coming to the Planning Commission for review. The state code is very clear about that. So no public hearing, no design reviews, and the application for a new primary residence and an ADU can be done concurrently. So for instance, if somebody's going to build a brand new primary home, they can build an ADU as well concurrently. In terms of the location, the creation of JADUs, we must allow them in all single family and multifamily zones. So in this city, it runs from the R1 zone through the R4 zone and the CM, which is our mixed commercial classification in the city. So we must allow them in all zones, and that's because we do allow residential there. We will not permit ADUs in commercial zones where there is a non-conforming primary home. So or even in some industrial zones. So for instance, there are some homes that are legal non-conforming. They're essentially grandfathered in commercial zones or industrial zones. And there we will not permit ADUs because we are basically extending that time of residences in those zones that are not legal any longer, right, to build new ones. Okay. The only criteria that the state gave us to allow us to prevent ADUs besides the zones is the adequacy of water and sewer services and the impacts that would occur, and also the traffic flow for public safety. But that needs analysis. The city cannot just say, oh no, we don't permit it because there's no adequacy in sewer service and water, or it impedes traffic flow. So there has to be an analysis. And
Sure. So owner occupancy, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. Owner occupancy refers to a requirement the owner has to live in either the ADU or the primary residence. So the law has changed. So any ADUs that are built between January 1st, 2020, the effective date of the law, through January 1st, 2025, do not have to have owner occupancy requirements. We cannot require, rather, that there be an owner occupancy requirements, no covenants. If they were built prior to this time, our laws did require it. And we do have many ADUs that do have covenants that are recorded. Right. So those stay in place. But the law also did say, however, that a JADU, which we have some in the pipeline, a JADU must still comply with owner occupancy requirements. Makes a little bit more sense because JADU is within the residence, the single family residence or the multifamily, or single family actually. That the law did keep the requirement for JADUs, not for ADUs. Do you want me to keep going?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
So we can have minimum and maximum sizes for ADU, but there are some ramifications, some criteria in the law. There's some limits, rather. The cities can have minimums that prevent creation of an efficiency unit. That's an efficiency unit is 150 square feet. Cities cannot have maximum square footages less than 800 square feet, or 1,000 square feet if the ADU actually has a one bedroom. Cities cannot have other standards that are based on. It is so hard when there's not a slide up there. It's so different. Cities cannot have other standards based on percentages of the primary dwelling unit. Cannot have other standards such as size based on percentage of the primary dwelling that prevent the creation of ADU that is less than 800 square feet. Okay, right. Which is what I mentioned earlier, is that in some cities, this is kind of a fix of the state law. They would have other requirements that in effect would prevent the ADU from being built. So we cannot do that. We have to allow at least an 800 square foot ADU. As I mentioned also, there's attached and detached ADUs. So with an attached ADU, 50% of the floor area of the primary residence or 800 square feet, whichever is greater. That's going to be the size that you will utilize. Right. For a detached ADU, you're limited to 1,200 square feet. So bottom line, there's just an ADU has to be allowed. A certain size ADU must be allowed on a property.
And in accordance with the state law, it does say that if you are building, so 800 is what we must allow, but they can do 850 square feet if they are building a studio or one bedroom, and 1,000 square feet for 2 bedrooms, 1 or 2 bedrooms.
One bedroom.
One
I
bedroom.
think it's one bedroom.
So.
Yeah. Should I keep going? Or you want to keep? You want to?
Sure, I can do. Let's see. So the height and setback. The state law does allow us to do up to 16 feet. We cannot prevent any ADUs that are less than 16 feet if the applicant would like to do 16 feet in height. we are not prevented from essentially prohibiting ADUs above garages. So if we choose to have the maximum height at 16 feet, that would limit the applicants from building above a garage.
Right.
So
we
16
still have
feet.
to we still have to allow an ADU, but
Yes.
it doesn't have to be allowed in that location.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, and also we cannot require more than 4-foot setbacks for these ADUs. So if somebody's building a brand new ADU, then we cannot say you applicant must provide 5 or 6 feet setbacks. Cannot do that. 4
Right.
feet is the maximum we can require
For side and rear
for side and rear, correct?
setbacks. Yes.
Correct. And
Minimum. I'm so sorry. Minimum or maximum?
for
We can't require more than 4 feet of
Right.
of an applicant. So we can't require a 5 feet
Yes.
5-foot setback.
But it still has to be minimum 4 feet. I'm sorry.
a
Yes.
minimum of
Yeah.
4 feet.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And-
Maximum. Okay.
And I'm glad you asked that because this is some of the difficulty with the law. The way that it's written, there are portions of it that are a little bit repetitive and some portions that require that kind of a okay, what does that actually mean moment in reality? So that's why this law it's very nuanced, and it's a lot of cities really haven't put out any ordinances yet because they're still working through it. They're still trying to figure out how to do it. So
And I'm really sorry to interrupt. I mean,
No,
just
no
because we
problem.
said
Thank you.
maximum
'Cause
4 feet, I was like
no,
confused.
I
yeah.
wanted. I was wondering if we were being clear because when I was
Right.
hearing you, I'm like, okay, because you read it one way, but you really have to explain it to
different way.
understand. So I'm glad. I was going to point out that it can be a little bit complicated. So yeah, thank you for asking that.
Yes, thank you. So in terms of parking, one parking space is required for an ADU per ADU or per bedroom, whichever is less. So parking may be provided as tandem or in driveway or carports, but we are not allowed to require any more parking than that per state law. So ADUs that are based on garage conversions, we cannot require the applicant to replace that parking that has been lost through the conversion of the garage. But there are ways in which we can, and so if an ADU is within a half a mile or in walking distance of a public transit, including a bus bench, and for the city of Hawthorne, most of our residential are within a half a mile of even a bus bench. We have a lot of large arterial streets where we have bus services, so we haven't been able, and we wouldn't prevent that from occurring. So the ADU has to be part of the primary dwelling or the accessory structure. So in terms on-street parking permits, they are required, but if they're not offered to the occupant of the ADU. So these are some of the things that are required. When there is a car share vehicle location within one block of the accessory dwelling unit as well. So these are the things that cannot be required to replace the off-street parking, except for those exceptions that are listed in this slide in number 14. I don't know if that made a lot of sense. There's a lot.
Let me try to
Yeah.
summarize it because it is a little bit difficult. So bottom line is we are not required to replace parking if someone's going to do a garage conversion. We just are not required. The state law also made it very simple. It's one or based on one per bedroom, whatever is less, right? We're not placing a huge burden on people. And you are not requiring parking. Correct me if I'm wrong. You are not requiring parking if the ADU is located within 1/2 mile of a public transit,
That is correct.
If the ADU is part of the primary dwelling or accessory structure, when on-street parking permits are required but none are provided. These are situations where you just don't require parking.
Right.
Because again, we are not trying to make it difficult for people to create these. So
That is correct.
okay? Yeah, it's a little confusing, but right. Let's see. Do you want me to take the next slide?
Short-term rentals, cities, and this one is also based on our short-term rentals, right? The state did make it clear that we can prohibit short-term rentals in ADUs. So that is very clear. We will prohibit that from occurring in the ADUs. But ADUs and JADUs can be rented separately, but they cannot be sold separately. And that's in accordance with the law.
Right.
As it stands. Would you like to continue that?
Sure. Let's see. Building and safety considerations, fees connections. That's the slide. So it's the top of the page 6, and I'm pressing the
16,
button.
yeah.
Or page 6 or
16.
oh, 16. There we go. I have a different number. So for an ADU, attached or detached, no passageway is required. You cannot require them to correct non-conforming conditions on the property. That can't be a basis to deny a permit. New or separate utility connections cannot be required.
That's just
No other connection fee or capacity charges. No impact fees, which is kind of a big deal. This was also part of the state law. No impact fees may be required for ADUs that are under 750 square feet. If they are over 700 square feet, then you have to be proportional in the manner in which you charge the impact fees. Again, this is a way to make it more economical to have an ADU. So that's important. Do you want me to do the next one?
the distinction.
The distinction, because JADUs and ADUs
Right.
are a little bit different. They're treated a little bit differently. That's what I was, I misspoke earlier. I was going back and forth between JADUs being allowed in multifamily or not. So they must be allowed in single-family residential zones, but not in multifamily zones. Owner occupancy is still required for a JADU. A deed restriction to ensure that is also still required. It must have a separate entrance from the main entrance. Must include an efficiency kitchen, and that's part of the definition as well, with cooking facilities and food preparation counter and storage cabinets of reasonable size in relation to the size of the JDU. And again, with parking, no additional parking can be required.
And to add to that, the maximum size of a JEDU is 500 square feet.
Yes. You want the next one, or?
Sure. So this is where this new law gets interesting in terms of the multifamily dwellings, because we must allow ADUs in lots of multifamily buildings. We are required to allow both one ADU per duplex or multifamily lot, and up to 25% of the existing units in a multifamily dwelling project, essentially. So multifamily dwellings cannot be expanded, but non-living areas such as, for instance, storage rooms, boiler rooms, passageways, attics, basements, there's some garages that multifamily properties do have. The applicants are allowed to convert those into ADUs. But there is a limit. I mean, 2 detached ADUs of at least 800 square feet with 4 feet rear and side yard setbacks with at least 16 feet in height. So that's one of the limits. Duplexes and multifamily dwelling units cannot add an attached ADU. They can convert space and add up to 2 detached ADUs. And this is where it gets a little interesting in terms, and we can't require parking. So it is an impact, but the whole reason for the law is to provide more housing, since we have a high housing crisis in the state of California. And I believe that concludes our presentation.
That's the last slide, yes. Does anybody have any general questions? I know it's
a lot.
we did it briefly, and it's just superficial, and yet it's probably still.
Just a really quick one. So that means that that's based on page 15. That means that ADUs cannot be rented as Airbnbs, right?
That is correct. ADUs cannot be rented as Airbnbs.
Okay.
It
Just
has to be
confirming.
long-term.
It does.
Thank you.
And that's why we're tracking. We're starting to track the ADUs in our GIS system, so we have a log.
Right. And if you recall, in the short-term rental ordinance, we said it as well. So
We did.
it's in several places.
Question.
Yeah.
So are ADUs or JADUs allowed in, planned unit developments? Or, or where there's a homeowners association?
That's a very, very good question. Do you want to answer that one, Maria? Because we talked about that.
We did talk about that. That does become complicated. So in planned unit developments, they received a certain amount of density based on the size of the lots, and there was a specific amount of parking that was required, and they were entitlements. The code is not, the state code is not clear on those.
Yeah. If you had to have me like push for an answer, I would say that yes, they would have to be allowed. Yeah.
Okay.
But that wasn't really addressed in the state law.
No.
Any other questions?
No.
We will bring this back, and we will have, we'll bring it back even before we prepare the ordinance.
Yes, I think we should.
Because we should have more conversations as cities are beginning to do these ordinances, and we're keeping track of all of them. We're trying to at least. We will hopefully be able to come back with a list of not just what the state law says, but some things that we can actually do that can address some of the impacts while still complying with the law and ensuring that people have the ability to build ADUs. So.
And we can easily prepare a chart indicating what some of the cities are doing in handling all of these new ADU and JADUs regulations.
And then,
Okay.
so for today's meeting, are we just getting an introduction to it, or are we actually discussing, what we want to see in the ordinance?
Well, this is an introduction, and we wanted it to be a time when you provided us the input, but we were just considering that because of all the things that are going on, in our country, and we're getting kind of bombarded with news every day, things are changing. We thought we might want to make this a little bit of a shorter meeting and kind of make it a two-parter instead, part one today to kind of just get you familiar, and then bringing it back again with the same agenda description, which would be, workshop and input from commissioners. But if you have something, I mean, we're all doing fine, but so if you have something that you want to provide to us right now, well, I think we should go ahead, but we were just thinking maybe folks wanted to go home, and so we wanted to be mindful, respectful of that. That's all.
And there are some.
We appreciate you coming. Like,
Right.
you're here, and there's so much going on, and we appreciate you coming. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you,
No problem.
Maria. But we appreciate that. We didn't want to push it a little too much. So
And-
go ahead,
And
Maria.
some of the regulations in the state are a bit contradictory. They can be a little bit confusing. And some of your questions, which you may have, we may have to get back to you with an answer, which is why Melissa mentioned there are some that you may want to email us, and we'll be prepared with an answer for the next presentation.
But if you have anything, commissioners, that you'd like, that right now, this is something that you've looked at or that you want to see, please let us know, now.
I still need to think.
I think I'll wait.
Okay, no problem.
Yes.
We'll do this again. This is
Digest.
ongoing. Yeah. Okay. Then that concludes our presentation, commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now as commissioner reports, any of the commissioners have any report?
I have
with you, Juan.
one thing that I've been forgetting to mention the last couple of meetings. So I've noticed for a while these signs everywhere for the William Hassan Foundation, and then I heard somebody said that at first it was kind of strange because there's so many everywhere, and I had never heard of the foundation. And then I heard that that this person might be running for mayor in the future, and so, I would like you guys to look at if those signs can remain there, because I hate for somebody to, in the name of a foundation that's supposed to be doing good, also be trying to loop it into campaign, by putting their name everywhere. So I think they've been there for a while. So I think there's some signage ordinances that if you guys can take a look at.
Sure. I'll answer like planning director because I'm acting as secretary now. I'll go ahead and talk to code enforcement and myself, legal counsel, to look into that and see what is allowed and not allowed. So we'll go ahead and do that. That was an answer that came from like 3 different parts of my role of my job.
You're being
So,
very efficient
yes.
today.
Yeah. So we'll look into
Multitasking.
that. All persons. Sure. Anything else?
For me, just stay safe.
Yes.
You know, it's crazy times. In my household, there's a lot of adjustments that we have to go through. I'm sure with every household. And today I heard that school might be off till June. So that is not very comforting. Not as a teacher or as a mother. But I mean, I just hope everything settles down, and I just pray that we're all safe. That's it. Stay safe.
Stay safe. Make sure everybody wash their hands and be healthy, and not freak out too much.
Yeah.
The people are surviving after having it. I know the news is kind of making it people worry, but please don't freak out.
I agree.
Yeah, stay calm.
I agree.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you to all the commissioners that did
Being here.
come tonight.
And
I know we're kind of
teleconferencing.
far away from each other, but
Yeah.
so someday we'll be back together.
Yes.
Anyway, so if there's nothing further from the commissioners, then these meetings are adjourned at 6:59 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.